So in our last video, we gave the to-do list the ability to do and undo a task. I've got 2 twice, I don't know why. Let's do 3. So I can class 3 is done, and it shows up inside the state. But we want to tell a user that it's actually done, so we want to add some style. Now, in the last video, I did say the only way to tell a user is to add style, but there's something we can do in the code before adding style to let the user know what's done and undone, and that's changing the text here. So let's do that. What we're going to do is have an ES6 ternary function or method. So basically, if it's like having an if statement, but in one line. So let me explain. What I'm going to do is, if the task is complete, then display the text undo. And if it is complete, sorry, the task is complete, display the text undo. If it isn't complete, display the text done. Right. So this question mark and this colon might look a bit odd to people who are not used to using JavaScript. So let me explain. What this is doing is essentially saying if task complete, then return undo, and then else done in a string. But this is just a one-liner way of putting it together. So if I save this and then make sure everything passed inside the console, property complete does not exist. That's really odd. Have I got a spelling mistake somewhere? Completed. Okay. It's my fault. Completed. There we go. Now if I check the console, it passes. And if I go into the code, 1, 2, 3, hit done, it says undo. So that's one way of telling user it's done. But obviously, styling is much better. Let's go on to the styling section. First of all, let's add a few classes to these parts of the code. Now in React, you don't add just class like that because class is already a keyword in JavaScript. So we need to put the word class name. And let's call this TDL task. I like to prefix my class names. So TDL in this case stands for to-do list. So I'm going to give that a class for to-do list. And here, we'll give it a class name. So based on the fact that a task is completed or not, it will have a class. So I'm going to put task completed and use another ternary ES6 statement. So if it's completed, add the class is completed. And if it isn't complete, then just give it an empty string. So I won't give it a class at all. And finally, for the input, I'd like it to have its own class because I want the input to look bigger than the default input that the browsers give you. So I'm going to give it a class name of TDL, standing for to-do list, dash input. Sorry. Cool. Now that's done, let's go ahead and actually add our styles. So this is what we put in last time. Let's add another variable called button gray. I like my grays. And we're going to give it just another generic grey colour, 35Es. I wouldn't usually style elements, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to put this together quickly and basically style all the buttons inside the code. So I'm going to give them all a height of 2.5 rem. So what rem is basically it's a measure of 14 pixels, so it doesn't change. So this is basically 2.5 at 14 pixels. So whatever that is, this is what this is. Going to give it no border. And I'm going to give it a font size. I'm going to give all buttons a font size of 1.3 rem. And I'm going to give them a bottom border, 4 pixels, solid, and 3 Cs. So this I'm only using once, that's why I haven't given it a variable. But usually if I'm using something multiple times, I'll give it a variable name. Margin left, 0.5 rem, and cursor pointer, of course. So the user knows it's an actual button, that's clickable. And finally, a color of button gray. Now I've already tried and tested these styles and know they work. But obviously, if you were doing this to an actual project, you'd go back and forth between the browser and the code to make sure it's an actual style you want for your project. So let's go ahead and style the container section. All I want to do here is make sure that all the fonts are font size of 1.3 rem. Okay, and just a few more classes to add. Let's add the is completed class, and what this will do is it will change the task to look like it's been completed. I'm going to add a text decoration of line 3 and give it a lighter grey colour. So we're going to use the button grey, which is lighter than the default black that the browsers give you for text. Let's add another class, the TDL input I added before. As I mentioned, I want a bigger input than the default style the browsers give you, so let's give it a padding of 0.5 rem from the get-go. And give it a margin of 1 rem for the top and bottom, nothing left and right. And final class to add is the TDL task class. And that's going to have a padding as well of 5 rem. Okay, the people that have seen me write CSS and know of my CSS know that I like to use something called atomic CSS, whereby basically if something has certain properties, I'll give it its own class, and that will basically make the code leaner. So an example of that would be font size. So I've used font size 1.3 rem here, and I need to use it here as well. So I've used that 3 times. What I would do normally for production ready code is just have font size like that, have it 1.3 rem, escape the brackets because that's not readable by normal CSS, and just put this inside there and then remove it from these 3 places and only use it once inside the HTML. For this code, however, as it's not a CSS focused tutorial and I'm not adding lots and lots of code and it isn't going to production, I'll leave it as is, sorry. But if you were going to go ahead and write production ready CSS, I'd definitely point out the fact that a class has been used multiple times. Padding as well has been used here and here. But like I said, let's leave it for this case and let's move on. So this is the styling done. Let's check it out inside the terminal. We've got no errors. And then let's go to the browser and see what it looks like. Okay, so we have a nice huge input. Nice add task button with a cursor over it, and I can add something like, I don't know, watch kind of funny. That comes up, buy flowers, that comes up, and so does buy chocolate. A few things I want to do here, add a capital D, because it looks a bit odd that one's capital and one's not. So let's go back into code, app.tsx, and change that into a capital U here and capital D. Save that, and let's refresh everything at some point. Okay. Now everything's capital. And this is basically it. This is the main part done. Of creating a to-do list in TypeScript with React and Webpack. I've showed you've gone through how to create a bunch of methods in a class, add types to them. You've gone through creating a Webpack config file from scratch, and yeah, I mean you're pretty much good to go in creating a simple TypeScript Webpack React project. If you've enjoyed this, like, subscribe, If you want to go a bit further and want a few more explanations on certain things, watch the next video. Until then, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in a future video. Thank you.